Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Tonight we are going to do one of two videos that I'm going to do on this Epiphone J-45 inspired by Gibson, as shown by the orange label in this J-45. So the first one we're going to do, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I came by the guitar and that kind of thing, because there's a bit of a story behind it, but right now, it's got the plastic pins that Epiphone sends with pretty much all their guitars, unless it's really a higher-end Epiphone. And these inspired buys, I believe, all come with like plastic pins, and which is puzzling. I mean, what is it? $10, $12 more to put bone pins in them. I don't understand any of that, but okay, you know, I guess all that stuff starts adding up after a little while. I'll put the specs up on this as we go along. I'll give you some of the basics verbally, but then I'll put some of the scale length and put up the maybe some of the other things that I can't recall off the top of my head. But you do have a bone nut and a bone saddle on this, which is good. You've got an Indian Laurel fretboard, just like all the other inspired by Gibsons, which high-end guitar makers are now using Indian Laurel as well. And nothing wrong with that. It's got a rounded C profile neck. Feels a little bit like a 50s neck to me. Almost like that Gibson Les Paul Jr. that I've got. It's got sustain for days. The X bracing inside this guitar is not shaved at all. That's different than the Epiphone inspired by Gibson Hummingbird that I've got, because those braces were carved, and you can see it when you look in the guitar. But it does have an interesting tone to it. Now I'm going to say a couple of things right off the bat. First of all, this does not sound like a J-45 Gibson. So for those of you that love Gibsons out there, you'd probably be glad to hear me say that after I did the Epiphone inspired by Gibson Hummingbird, because that inspired by Gibson Hummingbird, if it wasn't for the weight, sonically you would not know. That is, again, probably the sweetest sounding guitar that I own. So I just have to say that up front, because Epiphone really knocked that Hummingbird out of the park. Now and I've said this in the other videos, but you look at that orange sticker on this one, and I'm going to show you how to date these guitars and tell which factory they came from. So this 45, the Hummingbird, the Excellente, all were made at the old Samek factory in Indonesia. And I know that for a fact. So for any of you out there who are thinking that this was made at a different factory, no, it wasn't. The inspired by line Gibsons and the Excellente were made at the custom shop in Indonesia, and that factory code over there is 23, okay? So the first thing I'm going to say, and I'll hold this up and see if you can see it. I turned my focus off on this because it, well, actually, I think what I'll do is pull this up on my phone and do it that way. That way the strings are not in the way, and I can walk you through this serial number. So if you get one of these, before you even walk out of the door with it, if you will take a look at that serial number right there, you'll see that the first two digits on here are the year it was made. This one was made in 2021. The next two digits are the month, and that's 07, and that's July. So it was made in July of 2021. The next two numbers say 23. That is the factory code for the Indonesian custom shop, which is the old Samek factory. And then the rest of those digits are which number guitar you have. in the order it was made. And this one is number 9,158. Okay? Is a 5? Yeah. 9,158. And that's how you read the labels on these Epiphones. Okay? The other factory codes for China, Korea, all that, they all have codes that you can, those factories each have a code. So where that 23 was for Indonesia, you will see a different number there for a different code. If you see anything other than 23, well, you've got quite a few possibilities, I'll say. If you struggle with figuring it out, give me a shout. I'll look it up for you. Okay. Now, how I came by this one. All right. So I didn't really want to spend the money to buy a new one for a couple of reasons. As you can imagine, I've bought quite a few guitars lately, and I just had a hard time thinking about shelling out everything I was going to have to shell out to get a new one. So I've been watching Craigslist for about 6-8 months, ever since I got a little educated on Inspired by Gibson. And I was hoping one would come up within about a 50-mile, 100-mile radius of me, and nothing had popped up. I had ordered one of these used from a guy in Louisiana one time. It was a red one. And they didn't make too many of those, I don't think. But when I got it, it was nothing like he said. It was in really bad shape, and I sent it back to him, and he refunded me. And I suggested he tell a more honest story on Reverb, and that I would be watching for his next story if he tried to sell that guitar. Because, look, folks, just because you may have gotten taken on a deal is no excuse to try to pass that off to somebody else and call it business. That is not right. And I think that's what happened to this guy. Somebody had done some horrible work on this guitar, ruined it, passed it off on him, and he was trying to pass it off on somebody else. So I sent it back to him. And I hated to, because I really wanted one of these Inspired by J-45s. I've had 2 Gibson J-45s. And I wanted to try the Epiphone. You know, it's one thing to go to a music store and play them. It's a whole other thing to have it in your hands for a while and be able to play it for several hours, which I have done with this one. I picked it up last night, okay? And I've played it every chance I got today when I wasn't working. So this guitar, the gentleman who bought it new, took off this massive pick guard. Now, I don't know if you can tell it. You should be able to. There's a smaller pick guard there, and much thinner, to the point that it's almost no pick guard there. I mean, it's that thin. So the first thing he did was took off that great big 60s looking pick guard that was on here, and he replaced it with this thin pick guard. Now, I would have just taken it off and left it off, but he wanted a pick guard, so he put this thin one on there. And he did a great job on it too. I think it looks nice. It's like a Triple O Martin or something style pick guard. I think their OEMs have like a teardrop, and then their Triple O's have some design similar to this. It comes with a bone nut and bone saddle, and he also took out what I think was the. Now, a lot of people like them, but I detest active pickups in an acoustic guitar where I got to stick a battery in there. I don't like pickups anyway in an acoustic, but I like them even less if I've got to put a battery in it. Some people like them. That's okay. Whatever makes you want to play your guitar, I'm pretty much down with it, as long as it's morally and ethically right. Okay, and we'll just stop there. So it was a little bit of a job for him to get that out. As a result of it, because of where that pickup was located, he had to take this saddle out, and he had to put a bone shim in, which he super glued to this saddle. And I'm surprised at the action on it with that work. But he paid attention to detail. He was not a guitar luthier, but he did a fantastic job on this. So I have to give him kudos for that. This guitar, as I believe I mentioned in the serial number, was built in 2021. So it's a couple of years old now. And I still don't think it's opened up all the way. But the electronics are now out of it, because on the J-45s there was loose wires hanging all in here. Every J-45 I picked up, Epiphone, inspired by Gibson, wiring was just hanging loose and banging around. So I was glad to get rid of that. And then we had to make a deal. So he had it on Craigslist. Now, I don't mind telling you, he had it up for $500. And I offered him $400. And he came back and said, look, I'll tell you, my bottom is $450 on this guitar. And I said, all right, that's a fair price. I said, I'll meet you in, he lived in Caddo Mills, which is not but about maybe a little over an hour from me. So we met in Greenville, Texas. And I sat down, played it on the back of the vehicle for a little bit. And it was actually more than what I thought I was going to get. So I was very pleased with it from a pricing standpoint. $450, folks. Now this is a solid Sitka spruce top, solid mahogany back and side, solid mahogany neck, Indian laurel fretboard. I forget the name of the tuners, but I'm going to put it up in the specs. I love this style of tuner. This and open backs are my favorite. These may be Waverly's, but I can't remember. Sustain. It's got sustain, folks. And I've got a YouTube subscriber, and I want to read this to you while we're on here, because I had asked him a question. I'd asked a general question on the channel, and he answered. He was the only one to answer that question, and I am going to pull this up.
Here's what everyone gets wrong about running.
I hate these health ads. Nothing against being healthy, but I'm not crazy about them. Terry Ovell. One of the things that he said, because I'd asked this question about, is there a word for when you strum a guitar and you hear it all up and down the guitar? And he came back and he said, I think the term you're looking for is inclusive resonance, a sound that comes from everywhere. I know when I pick up a guitar, it has to inspire me, and when I cannot only hear but feel the sound vibrating into my chest, I have a winner. So I always look forward to videos, blah, blah, blah. So very nice words after that, and I'm not going to read them. But thank you, Terry, for telling me what that phrase is I was looking for there. But it's inclusive resonance. And this guitar has it. So this guitar does not sound like a Gibson J-45. So let's go ahead and get that off the table. It doesn't sound... I can't think of a guitar to compare it to at the moment. I can tell you it's fairly well built. I can tell you it has the shape of a J-45. I'm sure there's some dimensional differences. This one may not be quite as deep as a J-45. That's another one. But it has, and you be the judge, but I hear a very clear sound out of this. Not too much highs. Not deep in lows, but probably in that sweet spot. You know what I mean? You got a really good mid range here, and the highs are like I like them. I don't like my highs sparkling, if that makes sense. I like to hear them but I don't want them giving me a headache. You know what I mean? So I like the way this guitar sounds. Let's do what I always do. Now remember, I've got plastic pins. Now, I don't know how much of a difference the pins actually make. I think the nut and the saddle probably make the most difference when you change from a plastic to a bone. I don't know how much of a difference the sound is going to make with bone pins. So I've got some 5-degree bridge pins, bone bridge pins coming. And I've got 3 sets of them because I got 3 guitars I want to change them on, and this is one of them that I want to do it on. And then we'll come back and do a much shorter video just as a sound comparison. And I'll pull a few clips from this video and we'll merge them with playing it with the bone pins, and you folks can be the judge of how much difference it makes. I'll tell you what I think from just listening to it, but it'll be interesting to see and get your take on it. It's just a very soft fingerstyle touch to it, okay? Just my little fingerstyle version of Here Comes the Sun. I understand George Harrison wrote that song in about, I don't know, 10 minutes in Eric Clapton's backyard. I always get ahead of myself on that song, and then next thing you know, I'm like, where do I go? Anyway, it has a really nice tone. It's easy to play, I will say, and it has a place with me. Will I keep it forever? I don't know. I might, you know. But it does play well, and it does sound good. I may do a few things to the guitar, though. It really reminds me a lot of that solid birch Baxendale that I've got, as far as the tone goes. It just has a... I don't know, it sits in that spot, you know. Here's like... I'm not on bluegrass licks. I'm getting to where I'm picking a pickup a little more frequently than I used to, because you do these guitar reviews, you might want to learn how to do a couple of licks, right? Something. And I'm not saying I've learned them yet. You understand? But we're getting close. So, well, that's up for debate too, right? The guitar has very good sustain, and it has a really, really good sound. It's not too high and it's not too low. It sits right there in the middle to my ear. And I even had the guy, he could actually play pretty good. So I had him, he was playing the guitar, and I was able to sit across from it and listen to it, because it's a whole lot different when you're playing than when you're standing in front of the guitar. And I like the sound of it enough. I said, yep, I've heard enough. Let's do this deal. So I got to pick a case up for it. Probably get one for 50, 75 bucks used somewhere. All bare-fingered right there. So. Anyway, folks, that's the extent of this video. So we'll come back and do a part 2, and where I've got the bone pins in there, and I'll try to replicate some of what we did, just a few bars of what we did before, and just see if there's a tone test there. I'd like to know myself whether or not it makes that big of a difference, and being on this side of the guitar, I might not be able to hear it as good as being on the other side of the guitar. So I will write down all my settings so that I make sure that in the next video I got the right distance from the microphone and that I've got it leveled to where it needs to be. And then we'll see, does bone pins make that much difference? And we'll find out. Bone saddle, bone nut. Really nice headstock on this one. And I think the tuning keys are really match the guitar well and give it a good look. You know, I don't mind holding something ugly, but you know, if it is pretty, I'm not going to argue with it. You know what I mean? But it really is. The clarity on the guitar is really mind-boggling. Now, I will say Jalen Solomon bought one, and she did a tune. It's on my communities tab. So if you go to the YouTube there, where you see home videos and all that, you'll see community. I think she's the last one I featured there. And it's got, on that community tab, I have that video of her playing one of these. And she plays splendidly and does a tune that I just absolutely love on that guitar. I thought she did a bang-up job on it. So Jalen, if you catch this video, you really knocked that one out of the park. And if you stayed all the way to the end of this video, bravo to you. But I encourage you to go see her video on the communities tab, because she is playing one of these. And it's a good testament to how much fun the guitar is to play, because she is having a ball. And she did an outstanding job on that tune. So it's fantastic sustain. It's $450 well spent, and I don't think I could have bought you know, if I keep going, pretty soon that inspired by Texan Epiphone that I got, that Texan inspired by Texan, I will, if I keep getting these kind of deals, I will eventually have made up for that $700 or $600 or whatever it was, $500. I don't remember what I paid for it. Whatever it was, I'll get it back. I'm close to it there because if I'd have bought this tax, title, and license out the door, it'd have been over $800, $850, maybe even close to $9. Everything's said and done. So I may have made up for most of it by buying this one. So, which is a good thing, right? Nice looking guitar, right? They didn't do too bad. The finish is some kind of lacquer finish, but you know, they tend to spray them a little heavy there. But the neck feels good, you know. But like any other guitar, you have to get used to it a little bit. And I've had it out all day today. Played it all the way up to bedtime last night after I picked it up last night. Anyway, folks, take care of your friends, take care of your family. We'll see you in part 2, which will be a much shorter video. God bless each and every one of you. I really appreciate you. We'll see you soon.